Good evening and welcome to tonight's broadcast. How are you all doing? I hope you had a lovely weekend. Lots of wonderful programming, wonderful stuff. I don't know about any of you, but I've been really enjoying the Righteous Gemstones. Danny McBride is a genius. And if you enjoy Righteous Gemstones, make sure you check out that other show that he did with Walter Goggins, Vice Principals. I myself have yet to dive into Eastbound and Down. I'm kind of working my way backwards, I guess would be the best way to put it. But that's neither here nor there. It's the top of the week. We have a whole slew of broadcasts for you. Make sure you stay tuned and keep checking in. Also, we dropped another chapter of the Return to the Living Dead novelization, Frumess Peace Theater. We're reading through the entire book chapter by chapter. If you are a YouTube member or a Patreon, you can go check those out now. Tonight's piece of content comes by way of Atlas Obscura once again. Love this website. Eddie M's talking about monk chats already. Yeah, we're going to be talking about some monk action. I hope you're ready for monks, because we're going to be monking it up. It's going to be like that Red Hot Chili Pepper song, Funky Monks. Actually, not really. It's not what it's going to be like at all. But it made sense to say that at the time. All right, so we're just going to get out our little thing here. Let's pop this in. Boy, this is weird, wacky, wild stuff, I'll tell you what. Here we go. Are you ready? This is the tale. No, this is not about the band, the Monks. No, not at all. We are talking about actual monks who spent years turning themselves into mummies while still alive. You heard me correctly. Self-mummification whilst living. It's rather, it seems rather macabre, but there is, well, we're glad to have you, Eddie. There's a method to the madness, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. This article is originally from October 4th, 2016. It's by Davey Young for Atlas Obscura. Okay. We're going to start reading. Let's just dive into the meat and potatoes of it. This was for 31 Days of Halloween. We do 31 Days of Halloween on the channel, but we just review horror movies. So check that out. Some people don't like it. They'd rather watch paint dry. I understand. They want B-roll on top of the videos. I'm like, look, I'm one man. I'm only one man. The Japanese climate is not exactly conducive to mummification. What a way to start an article. There are no peat bogs. Peat bogs, that's what happened over in Ireland. You get bog mummies in the peat moss. There are no peat bogs, no arid deserts like, Egypt, and no alpine peaks. That would be South America for, like the Peruvian mummies and whatnot. The summers are hot and humid, yet somehow a group of Buddhist monks from the Shingon sect discovered a way to mummify themselves through rigorous esoteric training in the shadow of a particularly sacred peak in the mountainous northern prefecture of Yamagata. Okay. And, again, not only when they're talking about, like, in all these other situations, peat bog, arid desert, alpine peaks, usually is the here to judge anybody and what they do and to seek enlightenment. They're self-mummifying through diet and meditation. That's insane. That's crazy when you think about it. Biz says, Yeah, I remember seeing this on the Discovery Channel once. Hey, if I recall, they don't make you do it. Could be misremembering. No, it's definitely something that you'd have to choose. That the commitment is long and fastidious and requires probably requires voluntary a volunteer. It's not something you'd really force someone to do for 3,000 days. That's right. You heard correct. 3,000 days. Evil Flies a Kite says, I was not expecting this on the channel, but I definitely dig it. Sorry to randomly chime in. I don't mean to throw you off topic, Jeff. You're not throwing me off topic. I appreciate it. If I want to filter out the comment, I will. Glad you're here. Enjoy. Between 1081 and 1903, at least, so that for roughly a period of about 900-ish years, 800-ish years, 821 years, 822 years, at least 17 monks managed to mummify themselves. Again, think about that for a second. Mummify themselves. We talked about mummies once before on the channel. We talked about the mellified men, who were people that were literally mummified in honey. They basically became confectionery mummies. They became candied corpses. That's a good band name, Candied Corpses. In any case, the number may be well higher than 17 monks between 1081 and 1903. However, it is as likely some mummies were never recovered from their alpine tombs. These monks undertook such a practice in emulation of a 9th century monk named Bukai, known posthumously as Kobo Daishi, and I apologize if I am mispronouncing these terms, who founded the esoteric Shingon school of Buddhism in 806. In the 11th century, a hagiography of Bukai appeared claiming that upon his death in 835, the monk didn't actually die at all, but instead he just crawled into his tomb and entered, I can't pronounce the word, Nairo, which is a state of meditation so profound that it induces suspended animation. According to this, Bukai plans to emerge in approximately 5.67 million years to usher in a predetermined number of souls into nirvana. So this is fascinating. Okay, let's step away here for a minute and look at this. Basically what they're saying is this dude didn't choose to die or didn't die. He crawled into a state of meditation inside of a tomb that was so profound he became suspended in his animation, and that he plans, assuming that the earth will even be around in 5.67 million years. You know, who knows what will happen in that amount of time. By that point, human beings will have evolved, probably won't really resemble humans the way we do now, right? I mean, we haven't even been around for a fraction of that time, and we've evolved so much. So who knows, man? Who knows? But he's going to come back and have a predetermined number of souls ascend into some sort of nirvana. Biz says, have you ever seen the monks who play Beatles songs on their instruments? It's pretty good. I've not. That sounds cool. The first recorded attempt at becoming this word impossible, Sokushinbutsu, or a Buddha in this very body through the act of self-mummification, took place in the late 11th century. In 1081, a man named Shojin attempted to follow Bukai into Nayujo by burying himself alive. He too was hoping to come back in a far distant future for the good of mankind. But when Shojin's disciples went to retrieve his body, rot had set in. It would take nearly 2 more centuries of trial and error before someone figured out how to mummify himself, and they believed cheat death to enter a state of eternal meditation. So when these monks look at these mummies, they look at someone who's still living. In their mind, that person is still alive. They never actually died. They just transcended into a state of permanent meditation until a time where they choose to return from it. That is absolutely wild. And then here's the other thing too. It took 2 centuries of trial and error, because you have to think there's no textbook on how to mummify yourself straight up. You got to figure that out. How do you do it? What causes rot? And it's like, the amount of fat you have on your body, like all sorts of stuff goes into that. I mean, that's crazy. What kind of stuff do you eat? What kind of stuff can't you eat? They eventually figured out what they would need to eat. It's still pretty nuts. The process of self-mummification is long and arduous, taking a minimum of 3 years of preparation before death. But I've read elsewhere that it's upwards of 3,000 days. That's almost 10 years. That's 8.67 years, something like that. I mean, that's crazy. A minimum of 3 years of preparation before death. So you got to decide that not only are you ready or willing to die as you know it, but that you are going to do it by self-mummifying yourself. How does that work? Well, central to this preparation for self-mummification is a specific diet called Mokujiki, literally tree-eating training. This diet can be traced through the Shingado to the Taoist practice of abstention from cultivated grains. So basically, that's a $20 way of saying, just not having grains in your diet, farm grown grains in your diet for 1,000 days. The tree eating diet limits practitioners to only what can be foraged on the mountain, namely nuts, buds, and roots from trees. Some sources also report that berries may have entered the diet, as well as tree bark and pine needles. Time not spent foraging for food was passed in meditation on the mountain. So you're literally sitting there for upwards of 1,000 days or 3,000 days, foraging for nuts, berries, and pine needles. And when you're not doing that, you're meditating. And the goal is to emaciate yourself to such an extent that you essentially stop taking in water and any kind of nourishment, and you seal yourself up in a cave, and you basically meditate until you mummify. Crazy. From a spiritual perspective, this regimen was intended to toughen the spirit and distance oneself from the common human world. Oh, it definitely does distance oneself from the common human world. I would say that. From a biological point of view, the severe diet rid the body of fat, muscle, and moisture, while also withholding nutrients from the body's natural biosphere of bacteria and parasites. So you're basically shedding all of your bacteria and parasites in your body, because inside of your body, there are trillions and trillions of cells. It's my understanding, and do not, Winston, you're so funny. Winston says, "Oh no, not keto." This was the original keto diet. It's true, man. That's the original keto diet. I tried the keto diet, man. This is what I've come to learn. And this is just for me personally, not anybody else out there, because I know diets work for people. I can't do diets. It has to be a lifestyle. It cannot be a diet. A diet signifies that there's some end, and whenever there's some end, I just go back to what I'm doing. It has to be a change in my behavior and my way of life, or else it's not going to stick, or at least it's not going to last for any significant period of time. But that is fascinating to think about. So, like I said, between your gut biome, which is like, that's why you take prebiotics, and probiotics. I mean, you've so much going on inside of you. So when you do pass away, all that stuff blossoms. Like supposedly, why you get maggots in your orifices and stuff so quickly? It's not like a fly. Sometimes like flies like lay that stuff there before you even die. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all around. It's all around. That is slightly, first of all, John, good to see you. Second of all, it's not sort of unrelated. Well, it is sort of unrelated, but it's a great movie. Yes, I have seen Midsommar, and I really, really, really want to see the director's cut, and because I've heard great things. Totally totally crazy stuff. That dude, not those, that's Ari, actually. The other guy, Eggers, he's doing a new movie called The Northman, which I can't wait. Like a Viking, savage Viking film. It's going to be great. In any case, so you have so much bacteria in your body, but when you're depriving it of the things that the nutrients that it needs to spread, it's not going to be there when you die. Therefore, there's going to be less stuff around to break down your body and cause you to rot. Or cause your body to rot. You are not your body. You are so much more than your body. You are a consciousness, right? Even if you're an atheist, you have to believe in the consciousness, right? So, your consciousness, your spirit, whatever you may think of it, is operating a meat covered skeleton. You're kind of like, if you think about your body, you're kind of like what are those things that fight the kaiju? The Gundam, what are they called? I don't know, the anime thing, the giant robots. You're basically like a giant meat covered robot. But yeah, man, that's like so trippy though. So you eat this stuff, you lose all your fat, you lose all your muscle, and you lose all of your bacteria, and that will lead to mummification. The cumulative effect was to arrest decomposition after death. That is a concise, neat way of saying that. I just did not say that correctly. At the completion of the 1,000-day cycle on this diet, practitioners were considered spiritually ready to enter Nayujo. However, most monks completed 2 or even 3 cycles. So that's where you get the 1,000 days, right? Most monks completed 2 or even 3 cycles to fully prepare themselves. Now, here's my question. If they're doing 2 or 3 cycles, is that because they're like kind of apprehensive, maybe? Like, maybe I'm going to do it. Maybe I'm not going to do it. Maybe I want to extend this a little bit longer. But at the same time, it's like, who wants to spend 8 years meditating alone in the woods? Like, I'm all for solitude and stuff, but just like spending the last 8 years of your life alone, meditating and eating nuts and berries, it's like crazy. Like, not around anybody. I don't know. Just seems kind of these people are literally trying to ascend their spirits to a higher state of being. I mean, that's what it is. You're depriving yourself of the corporal things in this world, will push you. That's kind of like what Martyrs was about. Has anybody seen the French New Wave extremity film? French extreme extremity film? It's crazy stuff. Check it out. After the final cycle, the devout would cut out all food, drink a limited amount of salinized water for 100 days. What? So they would live without food for 100 days. Can you live without food for 100 days? I'm not sure you can. They would cut out all food. So that means you're not pooping anymore, right? You're just peeing. Where do you pee? Do you just pee in your robes or something? I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm literally trying to understand how this works. 100 days afterwards, you stop eating. I can't imagine that. You only drinking water, and otherwise you just meditate upon the salvation of mankind while waiting to die. This is a wooden statue of Kobo Daishi. So that's like the first guy, I guess, who did it. Many believe that some adherents at this stage drank tea made from Toxodendron verniculum tree bark, a kind of sumac. The Japanese lacquer tree is called such because it is used to make traditional Japanese lacquer called urishi. Its bark contains the same toxic compound that makes poison ivy so poisonous. Ugh. If ingested by these monks, urishi tea would have both hastened death and make the body even less hospitable to the bacteria and parasites that aid in decomposition. Sounds about right. Just sort of like adding a little, hedging their bets, I would say, right? When the devout felt death approaching, his disciples would lower him into a pine box at the bottom of a pit 3 meters deep in a predetermined spot. They would then pack charcoal around the box and insert a bamboo airway through the lid. and bury their master alive. Now, if you look at the thumbnail of this video, you'll see a diagram of what this is supposed to look like. Maybe I still have that photo, and I will throw it up here. We should really, I think we need to take a look at that photo. It's kind of imperative, right? Let's see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find, here we go. I got it right here. So this is what they're talking about. Let's take a little digital field trip, shall we? We're going to take a little digital field trip. Hold on one second. Let us take a look at what this looks like. All right, ready? Here we go. Okay, so here is what they're referring to. For those of you who are watching the podcast version, that's right. We're on Spotify and all your favorite podcast platforms. So here's the dude in the pine box right down here. Then they put, I guess this is supposed to be the charcoal, right? They brick it up, and he's got nothing except for a bell. Look at that. He's got a bell, and then you have your bamboo reed that gives you an airway. And that's it, man. That's the, at least the human version of you. That's the end of the human version of you, right? And you're just supposed to know, oh, I'm starting to feel like I'm gonna go. Get ready, guys. And everybody's so excited for you because you're going on the next step of your journey, right? To them, it's just the next step of the journey. This is what's known as what George Harrison talks about in the song on All Things Must Pass, the Art of Dying, choosing how to die kind of gracefully, I guess. Oh, these guys don't think they're dying when they're doing this. They ascribe something else is happening. So they pack charcoal around the box, as we just saw in the diagram, insert a bamboo airway through the lid, and bury their master alive. Sitting in total darkness, the monk would meditate and regularly ring a bell to signal that he was still alive. When the ring, so that's how you know in an age before cell phones, text messaging. So he's ringing the bell. Every time they heard the bell, they knew their master was still alive. When the ringing ceased, the disciples would open the tomb to confirm their master's death, remove the bamboo airway, and seal the tomb. 1,000 days later, so they'd waited another 1,000 days, roughly 3 years, right? 1,000 days later, the monk would be disinterred, which means you dig up the monk, and inspected for signs of decay. If any such signs were found, the body would be exorcised and reinterred with little fanfare. So, meaning they would just put the body back and bury it again, and they wouldn't be stoked. If not, if the body was determined to be a true Sokushinbutsu, it would then be enshrined. So basically what they're looking for is after 1,000 days, if you haven't decayed, if you've become a mummy, it means you're like kind of still alive. You're a living mummy, and you're just in a deep state of suspended hibernation, right? That's what they believe. And you've just preserved your body so well that you don't need to eat. You basically don't need to live like a human anymore. Kind of crazy. But if you've rotted, so some people would spend 3,000 days doing this, and then they would rot, and they would just, everybody would be like, oh, he's really dead. Whatever. Throw him back in there. Kind of crazy when you think about it. So they would go back and they would seal that tomb, or they would enshrine it. The last person to become a Sokushinbutsu did so illegally. A monk named Bukai died in 1903, more than 3 decades after the ritual act was criminalized during the Meiji Restoration, because the new government deemed it barbaric and backwards. By then, Japan had entered the modern age, and most people considered Bukai more madman than sage. His remains were not disinterred until 1961 by a team of researchers from Tohoku University, who were amazed by Bukai's pristine condition. I guess even though it was illegal, he still did it, and he succeeded in his task. And again, this doesn't work. Some laws are based on morality, but other laws don't necessarily mean. What I mean to say is, sometimes laws are just rules, and don't necessarily align with whatever the right thing might be. You know, I'm not saying to turn yourself into a mummy is the right thing to do. I'm just saying, like, you know, in this case, they determined it. It was something that was against the law when it was just, I mean, it was a dude who was choosing to leave, you know. And yes, you're absolutely right, John. All things must pass. Harrison records are a must listen. Do it now. That whole album, What Is Life? I'd Have You Anytime. Isn't It a Pity? Wah Wah. And The Art of Dying. Beautiful song. If Not For You. Thanks for All the Pepperoni. So many good Apple Scruffs. How I Love You. Phenomenal solo album. Everybody thinks it's the best Beatles solo album. However, I personally have an affinity for Plastic Ono Band. I think it is the rawest. I mean, it's almost proto-punk. It is just so raw in certain places. It's badass, man. I mean, it's just piano, a little bit of guitar, bass, and drums. You know, Ringo, half the Beatles, Ringo and John, with Klaus Vormann, who was there back in the Hamburg days and designed the album cover of Revolver. But that's another subject. Let's get back to, we're talking about monks here, okay? By then, Japan, we already said that, right? So they were stoked to find that Bukai was in pristine condition. Through, though he entered Nayujo, I wish I could just pronounce words properly. Why is this such a problem for me? It's really frustrating. Though he entered that state in Yamagata, his remains now rest in Kenzionji in the neighboring Nagata prefecture. Again, I apologize for my mispronunciations. There are 16 extant. What does extant mean? Extant means still in existence. There are 16 Sokushinbutsu in existence in Japan. 13 of which are preserved at the Tohoku region. 7 of the 8 found in the Yamagata region in the vicinity of Mount Yuduno, making it the ideal place for a pilgrimage. So people come to visit these spots and whatnot. Winston Smith says, man, they must have done a lot of shrooms to figure this process out. This sounds like some ancient aliens type of stuff. No, well, they took them 200 years of trial and error. That's how serious they were. You know, I mean, back in the day, there was no social media. There wasn't a lot of stuff to do. That sounds terrible. But you know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of stuff to do. This is the stuff you think about, you know? I mean, there's just not, I don't know. Tonight we are drinking Peach Aha seltzer. It's all yours, Eddie M. The band name Candy Corpses. It works perfectly. I think it's a fantastic name. You know, the thing about candy corpses or mallified men that basically mummify themselves in honey is that they're very sticky. And you know what else is sticky? Stickers. And you know who powers this channel? RiotStickers.com. That's right, folks. Josh Grove, aka Sharpie Riot, and his company, RiotStickers.com. Great place to get stickers. We're doing a special deal with them. Okay, it's a nice deal for your band. If you're a filmmaker, if you're an artist, normally it's $59 for 50 stickers. That's a pretty good deal, especially when the stickers are 9 square inches of real estate. That's 3-inch by 3-inch stickers. But here now, you can get 50 of those 3-inch by 3-inch stickers for $29.50. That's 50% off when you use the promo code Frumess. The link is down in the description of this video. So make sure you head over to riotstickers.com. Great stuff. I've done business with riotstickers.com in the past. A lot of my friends have as well. We all vouch for Riot Stickers. You're not going to find better customer service either, man. Like, you're just not going to find, like, the dude really cares about what he's doing. Really, it's hard to find companies like that. And so what more is there to say except to watch this quick little 60-second video?
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats.
All right. That's riotstickers.com. Again, promo code Frumess, link in the description. Check them out. Go to the website. Give it a look. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. The oldest and best preserved of these mummified monks can be found at, I can't pronounce that, Denichibo, mentioned above. His name is Shinyokai, and he entered Nujo. He entered the mummification, self-mummification process in 1783 at the age of 96. Like all others, he sits in the lotus position, which is like cross-legged sort of position, the lotus position behind glass in a box on a small shrine within the temple that looks after him. His skin is an ashen gray, pulled taut over the bones of his hands, wrist, and face. His mouth is stretched into an eternal jackal's grin. His face turned towards his lap. Shinyokai's elaborate robes are ritually changed every 6 years. So they change his robes every 6 years, twice as often as all the other Sokushinbutsu. The oldest robes are cut into small squares and placed inside padded silk pouches that can be purchased for 1,000 yen as protective amulets. That's pretty nice. So they have like a little bit of a economic tourist trade with these self-mummifying mummies. Testimonials sent in by people swearing that by these talismans, miraculous efforts are plastered around the base of the shrine. John of Doom says, John Lennon Plastic Ono Band was great stuff, but I'm sorry, what Paul and Wings were doing was so much more melodic and commercial sounding, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I've never really gotten into Wings. I love Band on the Run, and again, what they call it Sergeant Paul, which is Ram, is pretty interesting. There's a lot that swabs of McCartney discography that I have yet to wade through personally. Another Sokushinbutsu named Tetsu Monkai resides at the nearby Chirenji, also mentioned above. This guy, we'll call him Tet. Tet entered the self-mummification state in 1829 at the age of 71. See, this makes sense to me. You've lived a long life, especially by the standards of the day. 71 and 96 are long-lived lives. And you decide, hey, time to become a mummy. Let's do it. It was the same thing with the Malified men. The Malified men, just one day, they're like, you know what? We're ready to become mummies. And they would just do it. They would just decide to stop living. Crazy to make decisions like that in that kind of way. So this is what's interesting, though. This latest guy who did it at the age of 71, his life is perhaps the best documented. He was a commoner who killed a samurai and ran away to join the priesthood, an act that allowed him full legal protection. Later, he visited the capital city Edo, which is now present-day Tokyo. There, he heard about oh my God, what does this mean? Ophthalmic disease affecting the city and gouged out his own eyes. What? Okay, so I guess this is a disease of the eyeballs. He gouged out his own left eye as an act of merit that might counteract the malady. So afraid that he was going to get an eyeball disease, he ripped out his own eyeball. That might, I love the way the writer did this. He said he gouged out his own left eye as an act of merit that might counteract that malady. That is a $50 sentence right there. Incredibly, Tet is one of several self-mummies to auto-enucleate, remove one's own eye as a charitable act. So I guess this is a common practice amongst the self-mummifying mummies. Tet once served as the head priest at Honmoji, a short drive from where his remains are now kept. He was charged with looking after another Sokushinbutsu named Honmoyaki, the oldest self-mummified monk in Yamagata. The samurai turned priest, we'll call him Han because it's like impossible to pronounce all this stuff. We'll call him Han. The samurai turned priest spent a mind-boggling 20 years in ascetic training until May 8th, 1861. Imagine you train your body for 20 years to self-mummify. That means that he spent the last 20 years of his life eating nuts and twigs and berries and resins in order to get thin enough. That is crazy. Then his disciples lowered him in, delirious with hunger, into a pit behind the temple and buried him alive. A massive moss-covered stone epitaph marks the site where Han entered self-mummification amid a grove of pine trees, only a few dozen meters beyond the hall where his remains are now displayed. So how old was he when he did it? I forget. So at the age of 71, he did it, but he spent 20 years. So at 51, he decided, I'm going to become a self-mummified mummy. And then he was just like eating. That's all he ate. I mean, what a way to spend your last 20 years of your life. It's crazy. So these three are by far the closest to Mount Yodono. And the sites of their respective training are accustomed to tourists on the sites of their respective training where they did the training. So they are accustomed to tourists, and on weekends and weekend visitors are likely to encounter gaggles of retirees being ushered on and off the air-conditioned coaches that stop by these temples on the way to Mount Yodono. It's a 500 yen admission fee that for each one of them. And the sales, along with the sales from those protective amulets and other trinkets, that's what finances these temples. Keeps the temple doors open and their history alive. Han charges no admission and receives fewer guests, but they're still happy to show off their wish-granting mummy. The temples are happy with the attention and even went so far as to issue a special stamp card in 2015, along with Nenguji in the nearby city of Toshuru, I can't pronounce these names, to encourage visitors to stop by all four temples. So they have a stamping process. They're trying to appeal to the collectors inside the people, right? Okay. His body, wait. Okay. So another one of these guys who was mummified in 1878, a decade after the practice was made illegal, he died of an illness before he could complete his training. This other guy, Tet. And so he's not technically a self-mummified monk. His body is artificially treated in order to better preserve it. And the relatively simple shrines surrounding his remains offer the closest look one can get of a mummified monk. So even though he's not an official one, you can't get a better look than at this guy. So it's like good to sort of check him out as well. It's a good incentive, right? His Tet's failure to properly enter Nyujo is written all over his face, the skin of which is peeling away from his nasal cavity. This other place, Kikoji, houses two others, Chukai, who died in 1755, and his former disciple, and Nimyokai, who died in 1822. They now sit side by side in eternal meditation. Despite their difference in age, you'd think they were brothers. They have the same taut, glossy. I mean, when you've been gone that long, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? They have the same taut, glossy, and blackened skin, as well as the same bony hands, sunken eyes, and toothy mouths. One other thing we're going to look at, we're going to go over to Rancor, a place of which I was almost employed last year. I'm glad it didn't work out. I'm glad it was not meant to be, because I really like Rancor, but you know, these websites, they are very exploitative. Not Rancor particularly. I'm thinking of other ones. They want you to write 1,200 words for like $15 an essay. It's just so, I was like, I'd rather just talk on here on my own channel. What's up, Walter White from New Zealand? Yes, this has been a fascinating topic. Absolutely fascinating. Hold on. We're going to share this one last thing and then we'll peel out. Here are 12 gruesome facts about the Sokushinbutsu, aka self-mummification. Ready? We're just going to skip through these. It's a 3,000-day process. That's not exactly true. It's 1,000 days, but some of them do it for three times the training, right? So they say it requires 3,000 days of training. It's crazy. So crazy. I mean, it really makes you, whoever does this is really sure about what they're doing. They've really put their mind to it, right? We talked about that, the tree eating diet, yada, yada, yada. That's nothing new. Here's what one of them looks like. See, that's one of the guys right there. Wow. Black. Definitely his skin is blackened from the the mummification process, and you can see his shiny jawbone. The extended period of starvation fulfilled the necessary requirement of suffering. So you have to have a necessary requirement of suffering, and also solidified the basis of the mummification. As the monk starved, his body rid itself of fat and water, both materials that encouraged decay after death. We already knew that. They drank the toxic tea. We talked about the toxic tea as well. Okay. Arsenic water helped too. So one thing we did not mention, look, there's another one right there. I wonder if that's the oldest guy. Arsenic water helped too. Many monks who attempted self-mummification, a nearby spring was discovered to contain high levels of arsenic. Like the tea, this arsenic water probably hastened death while preventing decay. That's what they wanted. They entomb themselves alive, and that's what one of the tombs looks like. I don't think you can see it. Can you see it on the screen right there? Look at that thing. After an intense amount of starvation and meditation, they would retire to a small tomb or chamber, not much bigger than their own bodies. That's one thing that was not mentioned. That's a macabre detail. The space that they are in, which is a dark, like crevice hole, it's not much bigger than their own bodies. The monks would typically end up about 10 feet below the ground, sitting in the lotus position. Whew. And we know they would continue to ring the bell if they were still alive. Decay indicates failure. That's one thing that the article did not state very well, and it's stated perfectly here. That's the best way to say it. You failed if you decayed. If you were in a state of decay, you did not succeed in ascending to this state of nirvana. After 1,000 days, the monk's body would be excavated. Frequently, the body would be found rotting. In these instances, a monk's remains would not be fit for worship. The remains would be reburied after an exorcism. So that's what they mean. So that was poor wording in the other articles. So they would actually do an exorcism and then rebury the bones. And the thousands of days of suffering and meditation would have been for naught. Wow. But if the body didn't show those signs of decay, incense smoke would be used to treat the skin and ensure its longevity. Look at that guy. Right there. Few monks have been successful. If a body was found preserved, as we said, there was only 1,700 found. There could be more, but even still, you think about how many people attempted this and only 17 succeeded. If a body was found preserved after being exhumed from a burial chamber, it would be worshipped. Mummified monks would be seen as Buddhas, so they would be dressed in robes and placed in temples for viewing. Their eyes would be removed, but regardless, it is believed that these mummies can see into the souls of the living. It essentially, Sokushinbutsu was a sacrifice. Essentially, that's what it was. Bottom line. Maybe I should retitle the article to mention the sacrifice. Monks who attempted self-mummification did not consider their deaths to be, to be ending of their own life. They practiced this ritual in order to bring salvation to humankind, believing they would be able to protect people as long as their mummified bodies tied them to earth. And it was all started by one priest. And we talked about that guy. That was in the 9th century. And he was the first guy who did it. And he went through the period of deep meditation near the end of his life. He denied all food and water and eventually died. His tomb was opened well after his death, and he was found in a lifelike state. His condition supposedly resembled sleep. So these guys think that they're entering some sort of state of sleep. The mummies survived today. So there's one of these guys right here. Of the hundreds of mummies who were believed to have attempted, only 28 are known to have succeeded. Wow. And it is illegal. We learned about that. So there you have it, guys. Real interesting sort of stuff here. And we're not here to judge. We don't place judgment on these people, though. If you do feel like turning yourself into a mummy, call someone, please. Don't do it. Unless you're one of these monk guys and you know what you're doing, but you shouldn't. Life is precious. There's plenty of time to be a mummy later on. Stick around. Winston says, now I know what some of the imagery on the Seventh Son of the Seventh Son album by Iron Maiden is loosely based on. Cool. I didn't know that they had written about that. Interesting. What else can I say about this? Just a very interesting subject. And again, I don't want to pass judgment on people in what they do and their beliefs and stuff. But again, I guess you do have to kind of look at this as ending your life, and you should be very, you should seek help if you have thoughts like this. Talk to someone. Don't keep them to yourself. That's all I'll say about that. And we got shows up the wazoo. Tomorrow we're talking about Scream. Wednesday is Streaming Evil Live. Very special episode. We're going to be looking at Teenagers from Mars, the book from Kenny Kayafa, Jerry and Doyle's brother, and Frank White. That's part 1 of that series. And then Thursday we have Sinful Celluloid with Christopher Jimenez. We're going to be doing Dear God No, which is a film that came out about 12 years ago. So look forward to that, I think. What else can I say? There'll be another chapter of Return of the Living Dead, the novelization, next week. I think I will look into this. This bit sounds unbelievable. Just go to the beginning of the show, man. Like we dived into it. We really dived into it. John says, as a fellow atheist, why are you giving any credence to this hogwash? Don't want to offend, but this stuff is senseless fodder. I'm not an atheist first and foremost, personally. I don't know what I am, but I'm not an atheist. I believe in a power greater than myself, I guess is the best way to describe it. And I guess I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what comes. I don't know what is beyond me. But here again, I've talked about this before, and I'll say it again here because I think it's pertinent. And it's not that I'm giving credence to this. I just find it's interesting to me. I just don't want to disrespect anybody's beliefs. People believe in stuff, and it's not for me to judge. That's all. That's the place I'm coming from. It's what it is. It's trying to take a look at something that was practiced for thousands of years and do it from an objective and respectful place, whether I agree with it or not. John says, oy vey. Here's what I believe. Here's honestly what I believe. I when I think about this stuff, I think about ants, right? And maybe you've heard me say this before on the show, but I tried to imagine myself as an ant. And I think about how ants, when you ratio, I mean, this comes from a place of scientific logic, I would imagine. When you compare an ant to a human being, it's like quite something to behold, because, here next to an ant is a being of infinite knowledge and wisdom that can do things that an ant can't do, that has lived for hundreds of thousands of lifetimes of an ant, maybe something like that, who is bigger than an ant, stronger than an ant, can travel greater distances than an ant. Try explaining Google to an ant. Try explaining the internet or the TV to an ant. You know what I mean? Try explaining what a hydron collider is to an ant. Try try explaining what a hydron collider is to the average human being. You know what I'm saying? And when I look at it from that perspective, I just scale up and I imagine that in some way, shape, or form that we are not the be all end all. And it gives me a great sense of humility. It makes me realize that I can't tell you what it is, but somehow, perhaps something that we can't possibly fathom what it is. Our brains, as advanced as they are with all of their billions of synapses, cannot comprehend those things that consider us to be ants. You know what I'm saying? So in the same way that an ant looks at us, an ant can't comprehend what a human being is at all. And our brains might just be ants to something else bigger. That's how I look at it, in all honesty. And, for me personally, I didn't used to always be this way, but man, I used to like crush bugs and just all sorts of horrible stuff. And, when I was younger, much, much younger. And, now I go out. It's not something I ever really talk about, but I just go out of my way to just always try to look out for tiny little creatures and stuff. If I see an ant or a bug or something in trouble or potentially in harm's way, I move the bug, that kind of thing. Try not to step on an anthill. And I imagine that whatever is out there bigger than me has the same sort of benevolence for me that I do for the ant. And sometimes we accidentally crush ants. Sometimes I accidentally crush ants. It happens too. And that's how, there's no rhyme or reason to it. But I'd like to imagine that whatever that force is, that must be infinitely bigger and wiser and smarter than me, that it has some sort of benevolence to it. I'd want to hope that it has benevolence. And that's I guess that's what I believe. And that's what, and I think about this stuff a lot. I do. I think about my Nana just died, and I saw a picture of her body, and it made me when I looked at her and I looked at her face and she was all slack and gone. It was so weird because she was gone, but she was there, but she wasn't there. It was the same thing when my dog died. It was the same thing. I held my grandfather when he passed away. He held me when I was a baby, and I held him when he died in his deathbed. I held him. And one minute he was there, and the next minute he was gone. And so even though his body was there, whatever his identity, who he was, it wasn't there anymore. It was gone. It went somewhere, So it's it's kind of I imagine that I do believe in the theory, the principle of, energy can never be destroyed. And whatever is inside of me, my brain, that electricity, whatever that is, it has to go somewhere. I don't know where. They just determined out in outer space. How about this for you? They just determined out in outer space that black holes, we always thought black holes suck everything up, right? They suck up they suck up what's it called? Just everything, light, matter, all matter gets sucked up. They're discovering these black voids that are giving birth to all of the gases and things that make new stars. You know what I'm saying? So it's what do we know? What do we really know? What is really a black hole? Is that where people go after they die? Is that what happens? Your energy, your consciousness gets sucked up into these black holes and goes somewhere else? Maybe you always exist. You know what I'm saying? Every point in time never goes anywhere. It's preserved. All the good times and the bad times, they're preserved forever. Right? So time is not linear. All the versions of you in whatever particular moment in your life are all sandwiched in the same space. They're just not in the same space at the exact same point at the exact same time. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it. Oh, down the rabbit hole we went. That's just a little bit of me. That is just a little bit of me. But seriously, to go back to sort of round trip this whole thing back. How about this? Imagine an ant standing next to a shoe. And then imagine you could talk like, you could talk in ant talk. We'll call it antese, okay? Like ease, like Portuguese or Japanese, antes, right? And you say to that ant, you say, ant, what you are standing next to is a casing for an extremity called a foot, which belongs to a being that's thousands. I don't know how many times bigger we are than an ant. Let's say 100. Let's say 100,000 times bigger than an ant. So it's like you're standing next to a being that's 100,000 times bigger than you, that's lived, let's say, whatever an ant year is. Let's say a billion ant years. This thing has been alive for a billion ant years. It has this black box that contains more knowledge than every ant has ever known in the history of ants in this one device. And it's one of a billion devices that all fit in the pockets of these crazy... It's nuts, right? It's nuts when you think about it like that. Yeah, that sucks. But just remember what science taught us. We were just primates living in our own shit. Yeah, well, next to ants, we are beings of might. We are beings of might. So yeah, so that's a little bit of that's a little bit of the rabbit hole sort of exploring all this stuff. So like bottom line, everything. I am not an atheist, and I'm not necessarily a theist per se. I don't know what I am. I'm just sort of, I guess, spiritual. I know it sounds cliche. I believe in something. I'm not really sure what it is. I don't think I'll ever really find out either. I guess at the bottom line, I believe in a power greater than myself. That's what I believe in. Chris, I got my seltzer right here. Chris is like, what did I just walk into? All right, guys, that's the end of that show. Hope you enjoyed it. We don't get to talk to you spiritually like that on the show. We'll see you tomorrow night. And do you know about the Patreon? Well, let me tell you about it right now. Peace and hair grease. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jeff. So I've decided to make a Patreon. What is Patreon? I don't know how to define a Patreon. Let me look it up. Patreon is a membership platform that makes it very easy for creators to get paid for the things that they're already creating. I want to do it full time. I want this to be my full-time job. In my efforts to make that happen, I've set up this platform. Is it going to work? Is it going to be successful? I don't know, but I would rather try and crash and burn than not try at all. The goal is to create enough passive revenue so that I can continue to do this full-time, uninterrupted. Why? Because I love to do this. I love creating content. I love making videos. I love shooting films. I love doing podcasts. In case you couldn't tell, I love to talk and I never shut the fuck up. So right now I've kept the Patreon incredibly simple. There's 2 tiers, and that may change in the future. The Murdergram is a simple way to extend support for all of the hours and hours of free content on the channel for nothing more than $1. 38 cents goes to Patreon. What's $1.38, eh? It's less than a cup of coffee, but it's a great way that you can show support for very little effort. When you divide that $1.38 by the hours and hours and hours of time spent listening to this endless drivel of content, the dollar cost average works out. Next up is the YouTube casualty for $6.66. The YouTube casualty is loaded to the gills. Enjoy the archive ad-free, as well as ad-free early access to special docu-style podcast videos, music reaction commentaries, and the like, a month before they drop on YouTube, loaded with ads, I might add. You're also going to get exclusive content and behind-the-scenes content that is not available on YouTube or anywhere else. So you get to peek behind the veil. And believe me, there's a couple of choice pieces. Most of all, more than anything, whether you join the Patreon or not, I just want to thank each and every one of you that comes to the channel, that watches all the shows, that leaves comments, that participates, that subscribes. That's really the most important thing. This is just trying to find a way to earn a living as an artist. And with that, thank you for my TED Talk. Join the Patreon because we need you!
66 cents.